Yeah, well, I'm real interested in that life you had there in the projects when you were young and the connections you made with the guys and the people in the projects. And, ultimately that seems to me to have shaped you a lot. So tell a lot about uh, finally breaking in and connecting with a group and stuff like that.
Well, I guess in a neighborhood, it just happens. You know, you connect with different people, and there because you're squeezed in so tight. You know, you're dancing and fighting and carrying on, and yeah, it was, and because interesting enough, the projects was between two of the richest communities in North America, Great Neck and Manhasset, and they were big estates. They were, like I said, the Whitneys, but all the movie stars lived in Great Neck. We mowed Sid Caesar, Alan King's lawn, Barbara Streisand. They were all there. So in the projects, you were kind of isolated because I don't know if you know about that class status capital system on the East Coast, but they keep track of where you come from. You know, they don't want you. Like I was told not to come around because I lived in the projects, and that hurt for a 7, 8 year old kid. I'm like, what? Then I realized that we were the bottom of the barrel, and so that was a kind of a shaker. But I didn't realize it at the time. Probably didn't realize it till I was 30 or 40 that those connections, all those the Polish kids mainly, a lot of the black kids I grew up with, we stayed together, and it some of them came up here. I got some of my high school teachers to come up to Alaska. Many of my project buddies, Squashy, Joey, Richie, everybody came up. And one day you wake up and you go, wow, we're like a big family. And my own family, the McCanns were a bunch of drunks up in New England. They were useless. And then the religious bunch in Great Neck, they wouldn't be seen over there, Monsignor Rudden and the gang. If it got dark, they were scared. They were out of the projects, which was funny, I think. So you counted on the people around you, and you really counted on it. And you would do things. We'd work together, mow lawns, shovel snow, go fishing down at the wells, what we called the wells, where the oil barges came in. We'd catch snappers. And food was a big thing back then. There wasn't much food. And so I'll never forget when Kennedy started giving the cheese and the rice and the peanut butter. Somehow we had to get over to the 2 towns away to get that stuff. But when I see a block of Velveteen cheese, Velveeta, man, my mouth just waters. Yeah, I learned how to make grilled cheese. And we would steal food, which was luckily those estates, some of them had gardens. And so we would go steal carrots, and they raised horse corn for the Whitney's horses. And we'd steal this beautiful corn, but you could boil it for 6 hours and you couldn't eat that crap. But we would try. And I don't want to play up the food thing, but there was some pretty interesting food stories. Just coming up with stuff. Yeah.
Catching snappers sounds like in oily water.
Yeah, with a bamboo pole. We do. Yeah, it was good, but we'd be lined up down there. It was snappers and eels. Eels were kind of spooky because they were still moving in the pan. I remember that. And then carp, we'd eat carp. Yeah, but my mom had a tough time because there wasn't the food thing. Later on, she told me she didn't raise 3 kids to go hungry, but that was part of it. And then thank goodness for old JFK, he put us into some peanut butter. We did a lot of potatoes. We'd go down to Portuguese Deli, and I remember in the morning, Mom would say, the menu is potato pancakes for breakfast, potato fries for lunch, and then mashed potatoes for dinner. So, and I had to pack those potatoes. So I remember that, but yeah.
And she was working as a nurse?
She tried working as a nurse, but she was exhausted. And then my dad came by and at one point somewhere along the line, and she had another pregnancy going on. So she would do home. They gave us a telephone so she could do that Publishers Clearinghouse where you call people. Yeah. And then she was real good with the books, so she would do accounting. When the civil rights thing got going, there was an office set up in the projects there, and she would work for Mrs. Brisbane and some real high-end civil rights people, and she was real good with that, So she would do whatever. And then later on, when we got out of the project, she cleaned houses. But my mom was sharp. She went to night school when she could, but that was a dream for her. Education was a real big thing, but she spoke French, played the flute. I don't know why she spoke French, but she loved French. and really valued education, which took a while to rub off on on me. But
So let's pick up where you were talking about. Finally you getting the hang of fighting and defending yourself and so forth. So talk to me a little bit about fighting during your boyhood in the project.
okay, the fighting. I couldn't see that good. I could only see about 10 feet, and everything got blurry. So I had to kind of develop these other senses, because if you were going to butt into somebody or there was going to be a problem, you would hope you would see it coming sooner, like who was who or whatever,
Across the street.
Yeah, at least a warning. But I got where they would kind of be on me, and most of it was just, what do you call it, the pecking order, who could take care of what and everything. But the actual wrestling was a really big thing. And Ronnie, all the Polish guys were wrestlers, and that was a real important thing to them. And luckily they made me, when I defected from Catholic school in like sixth grade, seventh grade, Ronnie grabbed me over there and took me to wrestling practice. And was really good, really good.
So did they compete in school or a gym?
They started as early as possible in the schools, but they were junior high when it really took off. Before that, it was just kind of fighting, and West Side Story had come out, so the idea of fighting luckily we only fought amongst ourselves. But then when we could be mobile, a little bit older, we'd go fight. It was like this little gang thing. We thought we were cool, and we could battle. But the thing I learned remembering was, Ronnie used to say, it's all theater. You just got to show them that you're crazy, or you got to act bad, or you got to stand, like this. And then the boxing came in. We had a guy named Flory Rotunda come out of Brooklyn, and this kid, his brothers were all Golden Gloves. So boxing became more of a organized, get the gloves, work out, and wrap your hands.
Like at a gym or what?
It turned. We found gyms, but it was mainly early on. It was right there at the end of the row, and you're trying to figure out how to survive. And what I realized looking back is, because we weren't book smart and we weren't, we're in a class of 60. I can't see the board, so me to survive in a school is going to be tough without some help. So my theory was, or my belief was, that you just had to be the baddest cat you could be. And we would practice. I mean, when we were delivering newspapers, we won an award and we got to go to Jersey. Believe it or not, there's like 6 or 8 of us going to Jersey. You know what we did to practice to go to Jersey, to Palisades Park? We got our hair done like DAs, the duck's ass, and we practiced our strut. What was your strut? You had to have, oh God, it was funny, because Ronnie's sisters, Mary Ellen and Wanda, would do our hair, and they'd spray it with the hairspray, so you could be on a roller coaster, and your hair wasn't going to go nowhere. It was amazing. And then the strut, his older brother Stanley was a hoot, and Stanley said, let me see your strut. And you had to have this look like you were the baddest ass cat, even if you couldn't do nothing. I mean, we had some guys strutting, and we're thinking, they're going to run home to mama, But it was all this intimidation and this act, and if you ever watch The Wanderers by Richard Price, that's golden, because he had it. He was up in the Bronx, Bronx City, and he could bring that out. That movie I used to watch it when I'd write my stuff. It was golden, man. It was golden. But you ended up being this little badass, and, you're going to get beat up, It's going to happen, especially if you ain't with your gang, And there is a story in one of my books where I get sacrificed over to Port Washington. I'm a little bit older. I'm probably 14 or 15, but they sacrificed me, and I have to fight Joe Gallo's grandson, Tony Gallo. And that was a scene, but that's a whole nother, But what happens as you refine your art of fighting, then you got to move on, And because I couldn't see that good, once I got into boxing, we boxed over in Port Washington at the PAL or wherever it was. If I got more than 4 or 5 feet away from you, I couldn't read you, So some of my fights that were really good up close, and the guys would say, well, why'd you let me go after that? I said, because you got too far away. I couldn't see whether your eyes were focused or you were going down, which was really crazy. But the boxing, And for some reason, I would get knocked out easy, and that's not a good thing if you're a fighter. If you go down, my head wasn't that hard, or I had a glass, whatever it takes. But yeah, getting knocked out. I'm so glad it didn't last for long. But I had a lot of power because we were working out, and if I decided the lights were out, it usually, it,
So you were lifting weights at this time?
all the time.
Where? Somebody's big?
Sometimes out in the grass. We had a set of dumbbells. I remember we all pitched in for $10 and bought a set of dumbbells. And then we moved on up. And it got to the point where we could go work out at the Merchant Marine Academy as we got older, And then we worked out in Port Washington. But it was all about being tough,
Yeah. One little sideline is when you're not seeing the board and you can't see 10 feet. What about a pair of glasses?
There were funny things in the projects, but a couple things weren't cool. Glasses and guitars. That was for like lightweights. So I went to St. Albans, which was the biggest Navy hospital. My mother was desperate. My one eye would take off once in a while on its own and freewheel, and she wanted that fixed, So we were lucky to get into this hospital because my dad was in the Navy. And they gave me a pair of Buddy Holly glasses that were really cool. But I remember I was so uncomfortable and I was worried about getting hit with these glasses on. And so I traded them for a fishing pole because I thought food is more important. I don't need these Buddy Holly glasses.
It's kind of before contact lenses.
Yeah, well, I was like, back then I was probably 8 or 9, but I remember my mother, well, you what? I said, no, I'm not, it was till I was 19 when I realized, I was playing lacrosse, playing football. I couldn't see. Like lacrosse, I never saw the ball. I ran right into the goal, but I was still good enough in the defense. I was good, but it was a shame because it was a waste. And when I was finally hitchhiking around Europe and trying to read shit, I got a pair of glasses somebody loaned me, and I went, wow, what a difference. So when I came back, I wore glasses a bit. But I still was leery of them because I always envisioned getting popped,
Yeah.
Yeah, so...